Gavin Newsom has been accused of one gaffe and then triumphantly celebrated for fighting against Donald Trump in basically the same breath. So let's go through both of those things. The governor of California is in the news for right now. We'll start with what he's been accused of, which is kind of shifting the blame to local folks. Here he is asked about water shortages in Los Angeles during the fires.
What is the situation with the water? Obviously, in Palisades, it ran out last night in the hydrants. I was talking to the firefighter on this block. They left because there was no water in the hydrant here.
The local folks are trying to figure that out. I mean, just when you have a system that's not dissimilar to what we've seen in other extraordinarily large-scale fires, whether it be pipe, electricity, or whether it just be the complete overwhelm of the system. I mean, those hydrants are typical for 2 or 3 fires, maybe one fire. You have something at this scale, but again, that's going to be determined by the local.
So there he is showing up for the photo op in Altadena, which is a completely different fire from like the rich folks area. That's like the small town, northern outskirts area. And he's being accused of kind of crapping on the local people from that clip. We'll talk about that, but also punching up. Now, Donald Trump accused Gavin Newsom of being at fault for all of the fires in all of Los Angeles because, as Donald Trump said, Newsom didn't sign the, I want to get this right, Water Restoration Declaration, sending water from NorCal to SoCal. And I can get into some of the details of that in a second, namely that declaration just literally doesn't exist. But here is Newsom's response when asked by Anderson Cooper.
I hate to even ask this question, but the president-elect chose to attack you, blame you for this.
One can't even respond to it. I mean, people are literally fleeing. People have lost their lives. Kids lost their schools. Families completely torn asunder. Churches burned down. This guy wanted to politicize it. I have a lot of thoughts, and I know what I want to say. I won't. I stood next to a president of the United States of America today, and I was proud to be with Joe Biden. And he had the backs of every single person in this community. He didn't play politics, didn't try to divide any of us.
So there you go. Cenk, reactions to the accusations that he's kind of blaming local folks, and then how he handled the Trump accusation.
Yeah, terrible all around. So why does he blame local folks? Because he's trying to avoid responsibility. And by the way, it's a super bad look. So like people get mad at me when I criticize Democrats. Are you going to get mad at Gavin Newsom? Because he just threw Karen Bass right under that bus. Okay. And second of all, he didn't have any answers. So you're the governor. Look, I get it. It's tough. And by the way, the winds are extreme. And this fire would have been super tough to fight even if you had a perfect mayor and a perfect governor. But instead of giving any substantive answer, he deflected to blaming local Democrats as opposed to himself. And that gives you a sense of the kind of leader he is, or lack of leadership. And then I've got to also point out Anderson Cooper's beginning to that question was perfect, because he said, I hate to even have to ask you. I mean, you're a beloved corporate Democrat. Understand that it gives me great pain to ask you a semi-tough question, which is not even tough. It's a softball. Donald Trump made up a thing to blame you for. Can you then answer the easiest question in the world? But even then, he's like, I beseech you. I apologize. I bow to you before I ask you this question. The temerity I have to ask questions as a reporter. So it tells you all you need to know about mainstream media. Anyways, then you get to his answer on Trump. He's politicizing this. That's what every coward politician does whenever there's a tragedy. Oh, don't politicize this. You guys know who does that the most, right? Republicans when there's a mass shooting or a school shooting. Oh, no, don't politicize this. Don't politicize this. Thoughts and prayers. Thoughts and prayers. Now, when people are affected by this, and they might be angry enough to ask for change, you want to do change? No. Let's wait until they forget. And that way we won't have to do change. So, no, spare me that nonsense about, he's politicizing. Brother, you're a politician. He's a politician. So don't tell me about it. Not answering the question is politicizing it. So I barf every time I hear these politicians going, oh, I don't want to politicize it because I'd like to avoid political responsibility. He's so unbearable.
Yeah, I'd say many things are true. One, that the CNN thing, absolutely. Like, there is no bigger, like, affinity, to put it nicely, than mainstream media's love of Gavin Newsom. I understand why, as I responded to one of Anna's tweets. The reason is because he looks like he could sexually gratify many people at once. Like, that is literally where he gets it from. In terms of his, and that's, like, gross, but it's true. But, like, he's definitely better at that than Karen Bass. Just proving he's not robotic. He's doing the thing. But with me and Gavin Newsom, it's like he is a better leader. And he's a very talented candidate. And that's most of what I want that I don't get with national politicians on the Democratic side. And he also, like, made insulin for people. These are things that he knows he has to do, that he does publicly, and maybe it's like Stockholm syndrome, but it's like, I am grateful that he does actually do some stuff, and maybe they're just crumbs that he's throwing to progressives, but he does throw some crumbs to progressives, though I know there are a lot of different issues with him. The other thing is, like, this is, as an Angelino for 5 generations, like, my great-grandfather was a key grip on Gunsmoke. Like, that is how long we've been in Los Angeles. My grandfather was the Malibu locksmith. And, like, he moved because fire. He lived in Hollywood, moved to, played when you could do all that stuff financially as a locksmith, and then moved out because of fire and landslides. And that is what happens in that area. And these are, like, typically the Santa Ana winds peak at a certain time, blah, blah, blah. Everything I'm going to say at the end of it is, like, the first thing people say, yeah, I know it's a really intense fire. Like, that's a huge thing. Yes, this is a giant thing. And no matter how many people you had, like, literally the only way you could put out these flames is if you had a giant dam you could break instantly, because you had high winds that you can't fly planes over. Though I know in the wake of this, we'll find a bunch of incompetent. I've already mentioned competence, and I've mentioned a bunch of it earlier, where, like, there are a lot of systems, like, shutting down power is necessary. Also necessary, having power so you can run the pumps to get the water out. And there is no backup generator. You have to bring that into place. Like, that's a problem. We should change the system in order to fix that. And what are the results? Well, how is LA doing? I just want to say the Sunset Fire, the Sunswept Fire in Studio City, the Woodley Fire. These are all smaller fires that kind of broke out and got 100% contained. Many of them in the valley and the hills. Palisades fires, at least, and these were all taken at a snapshot. Maybe some have reignited, but 17,000 acres burned, 0% contained. Eaton Fire, which is the one in Altadena, which is northeast by the Rose Bowl, that is 0% contained at 10,000 acres. The Hearst Fire is 855 acres and 10% contained, and the Lydia Fire, 40% contained. And then there's a new one that just broke out near Calabasas that they're trying to fly people around on. But there are dozens and dozens of planes flying around, and we'll find out more. The big thing that people had talked about before we go to break, and Cenk, I'll give you a chance to comment on this, is a lot of folks are talking about the cuts to the fire department. Karen Bass had a $17.5 million cut to the fire department. That amounts to 2% of the previous year's budget. It was cut by. There's a lot of people trying to rebut this, and they're saying, like, a lot of it was one-time purchases that we had to make last year that we don't have to make this year, and other things are like cuts to the fire department's salary. And so that's kind of a little bit of background there. But Cenk, final thoughts on this story before we take a break.
Yeah, it's just complete lack of preparation in every regard. Could there be a fire in the Palisades? That would be one of the first places that I would expect that there would be a fire, right? Because of its positioning in LA. Like, most of the fires start in that Malibu, Calabasas area. That's because there's more, forest area there, and then it jumps into the houses that are nearby. So for that entire area would be my top priority. Oh, hey, it turns out we don't have enough water in the fire hydrants for a fire, or it's going to take longer to bring up the water pressure. These are things that I would hopefully have thought of and planned out. And maybe you can't do it for every area of LA. I get it, and it might be too tough a standard. But you at least, I got no reassurance that they were ready for this. So it seemed like panic from minute one to right now, right? And so we just kept getting in the news, the fires are 0% contained, 0% contained. And then there was another fire and another fire. And at some point last night, there was 4 to 5 fires. I started to lose count. So my sister's sending me a picture of a giant fire coming over the Hollywood Hills. I've got a giant fire to the north of us, and on it goes. Then a friend of mine called and said, my wife's best friend's house is gone. The guy we play basketball, his house is gone. The guy we play poker with, his house is gone. And he started to worry that the fires are going to converge and consume all of LA. So in a situation like that, whoever's in charge, and in this case the mayor, has to come out. What I would have done is given an endless number of updates. I would have told people, look, guys, here's the situation. And I would have told them the bad news, and I would have told them whatever is the good news, and I would have given them updates. Like, no, it's a real fire. It's super serious. So if you're in the Palisades, you got to get out of there. Listen to our evacuation orders, et cetera, et cetera. But guys, if you're in this area, don't panic. We'll let you know. And the minute that there's a new fire, I'd get out there and I'd say, here's what's happening. Here's what you need to do. And just have a firm control of the situation and make sure that the citizens don't panic and that they get to safety and that they know that there's someone in charge who's doing it exactly right. Instead, we have, now, if you have problems, go to a URL. Jesus Christ, man. Banal incompetence. And when you're in the middle of a giant natural disaster, banal incompetence doesn't cut it. It doesn't come within a million miles of cutting it. This was an epic disaster. Yesterday, Karen Bass lost her re-election. Look, every neighborhood app is on fire, sorry for the analogy, of F Karen Bass. Like the loathing of Karen Bass is now at a peak because she is deeply incompetent and doesn't care. Meanwhile, I read Politico, a story about her. Oh my God. They're like, she has incredible experience and leadership, and the people of LA love her, but this is a slight blip. Oh, just shut up already, mainstream media. Jesus Christ, man. So, no, she's a goner, and she should be.
And that strip of Palisades up through, anyways, I don't know, people north of Montana, like that whole area, Santa Monica, that is like prime fundraiser areas for Democratic politicians, nationally and locally. Anyways, we did some polls on YouTube and Twitch, and both said that Karen Bass, and it was guilty or not guilty, Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom, and they came back pretty overwhelmingly guilty, 70% for Karen Bass and 80% for Gavin Newsom.
Thanks for watching. If you become a member, you get to watch all this ad-free, except for, of course, this ad. Still, hit the join button below.